Hello everyone, my name is Richie and welcome back to another video. Today join me for another comparison video, and today we're taking a look at the Class 150. So yes, today we're taking a look at the Class 150, and today I thought I'd do a bit of a before versus after video because, if you didn't already know, in the Riviera line the Class 150 has seen a lot of improvements. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to take a look at the recently released Riviera line Great Western Railway Class 150, and then we're going to compare it to the also relatively recently released Cardiff City Network Class 150 and see, you know, before versus after what the 150 sounds like and kind of like performs like physics wise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into a service for around about 10 minutes on each of the two routes, and we're going to mainly listen to the sounds because the 150 sounds are quite contentious. I kind of did like a similar thing to this a few months ago where I compared the Cardiff City Network 150 to the West Cornwall local one. So kind of consider this a sort of part 2 to that. If you've not seen that, I'll leave like a link to it somewhere. So without any further ado, let's jump into the Class 150s before versus after. Right then, here we go. I've jumped into Cardiff City Network because we're doing this in release order. So let's get ourselves started and get ourselves set up, shall we? So this is the Cardiff City Network Class 150, the Transport for Wales one. Now, first things first, it's all quite interesting around here because it's all the like old light setup. In the Great Western Railway one, it's all like quite refurbed and stuff down here. So first things first, let's get the key in over there. That's all the same sort of stuff. Let's do that, that's all fine. Open the doors. The sort of door closing and opening sounds I think are quite similar. I don't think they've changed too much, but we'll listen out for that as well in the Great Western Railway one. So obviously the first thing first, you need to put this into, I think it's left or right, something like that, I don't know. Turn your tail lights off and your marker lights stay on as well. We need to turn them on actually, so let's turn them on. And that should be all good. So obviously in the Great Western Railway one, you can do it automatically, it just says day headlights. So that's quite an interesting change there. Of course, for the idling sounds, it's quite quiet compared to the Great Western Railway one. I feel like the new one on Riviera has got a bit more beef about it. It's a bit more, like it's much louder when it's idling. So what we're going to do is we're going to drive this for around about 10 minutes. We're going as far as Cogan, so literally a 10-minute service. Just to kind of listen to the sounds, the braking sounds, all that sort of stuff. And then obviously we'll do a sort of similar length service in the Riviera line. I'll tell you what we can do. Let's run through the train. It doesn't matter if we're late or anything. So let's go through here. What's the sort of differences through here? Obviously, one big difference will be a livery, which we're not really going to focus on. Let's have a little look around here. Obviously got like guard panels and stuff like that. So I think they'll all be there in the Riviera one. Let's have a little run through here. So I wonder if there'll be any changes to like things like this. We're not really focusing on the modelling. It's more focusing on like the sounds and the physics. But obviously got PIS and stuff in here. You can run through here, so the sort of door sounds will be like the same, wouldn't they? They won't sound too dissimilar to the Riviera one. But yeah, the modelling inside is pretty decent. I don't think there's any issues when it comes to modelling. It's mainly the sounds and the physics. So let's get back in the cab and let's get going, shall we? Right, let's get back in here. So let's do that. Awesome stuff. Do the 8 cam. And let's listen to the door closing sound, because that's the first thing. Cool, they're quite similar, so they do that little pause before they fully shut. So, right then, let's get going. So let's listen to the Class 150, the Cardiff City Network Class 150, going along the way. So let's get going. So there you go, there's a little sample of the sounds, which it certainly shifts, so it goes quite quickly, but that's the sounds, which are noticeably different. Once we jump into it, you'll see what I mean, but yeah, I can see what people mean. Like, if that's not how a 150 should sound, then I can see why some people didn't particularly like the sound originally, but I don't think it sounds too bad. Like I say, I've definitely heard 150s that sound like this, but the Great Western Railway one's just got a bit more beef about it. Of course, here we go, physics and suspension, so it's got all that, but of course, from a physics perspective, it certainly gets going, so there's no issues there. So I feel like the West Cornwall local one was quite sluggish compared to this, so this one's definitely got a lot more power, so that's one thing to look at when we jump into the Riviera line. Of course, a little thing to look out for is the smoke, the just trained smoke. So there's a lot of that on the Riviera line one. On this, it's not too bad, but we are just sort of like idling around. So if we start going, hopefully, wherever the fumes come out, you should see plenty of it. There you go. Look at that. So there's plenty of smoke coming out there. Hopefully, there might be more of that because these are mucky. These are dirty diesels. I'll get a couple more sounds whilst we're rolling along here as well. So as we go along, obviously we've got 25, so we can't really go that quick, but after Grangetown we can certainly like floor it for at least a mile or so, just to kind of listen to like the full sounds of the 150. I tell you what will be a good test as well, braking sounds. So once we come into Grangetown, you should be able to hear what the brakes are like. Let's do a little bit of a slowdown. So if you go into brake 1, the brakes are alright. To be fair, I feel like Class 150 brakes should be quite sluggish anyway because they're old trains. I mean, how old are they? Like 30 years old? One thing I feel like I need to take away from this as well is that the sounds inside the train are quite quiet. So I think realistically you would hear an awful lot. If I had time, I'd actually go into the train as a passenger and sort of listen to it there, because from my personal experience on a Class 150, they're very, very noisy when you're in them. Anyway, we're coming into Grangetown, so let's listen to the brake sounds. Do they have a bit of brake squeal? That's the main thing we want to look at. So let's get some brakes in. We're going to do like a harsh brake to fully listen to what the brakes sound like. So any moment now, and full brakes. Let's have a listen. Do they do a bit of squeal? There you go, there's a bit of a brake squeal there for you and some door opening sounds. So to me, they sound pretty decent. Of course, from a modelling point of view, absolutely no issues whatsoever. They look like 150s, and to me they sound sort of like 150s. I've never really had any issue with the sounds, but a lot of people point them out, and when I've played the Riviera line, I can kind of notice the difference. So this will be like a straight up comparison to sort of see what the two are like. Anyway, let's get the doors locked and let's get going once more. Right, let's go over here and do a little departure shot because I want to listen to what the sounds are like once more. So let's do that and let's get going. So full beans, all the beans. Right, off it goes. I'll be quiet as the 150 departs. There you go, cool. So that's a couple of the sounds there. So we can get up to 30 and then we can get up to 40, so we should be able to listen to it like at full throttle. Well, actually we can get up to 50 here, so let's go right up to it and then I'm going to full throttle it up to 50. So this is what it sounds like at full power for a long time. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound too bad. If I'm honest, it doesn't sound that awful. It sounds like it's sort of struggling, which to me, whenever I've been on a Class 150, it does sound like it's struggling a little bit. So I can I don't have too much issue with it, if I'm honest. Of course, from inside the cab, again, it's a little bit quiet. So I'd expect, like, as a passenger, you do hear a lot of the engine. You might not be able to hear it in the cab as much because it's a little bit more isolated, but it's one of them, isn't it? It could be improved, and I wonder if it is improved in the Riviera line. Right, let's slow down a little bit. So as it brakes, you can see that we're moving and stuff. So the physics aren't an issue there. I would imagine, you know, if we did like full brakes, you'd like lean right forward, as you can see we're doing so now. So, you know, the physics are not too bad. The physics are actually alright. I know they got improved with Cardiff City Network, so the West Cornwall local one will certainly not have these sorts of physics. Now, I'd like to full throttle it around the corner, but we've got to get down to 20, so let's slow down a little bit. But like I say, once we get into Cogan, I'll do another full brake again to listen to the brakes just once more. Oh, I tell you what we do need to do as well, the horn sound. So let's listen to the horn. There you go. So we need to test the horn sounds. That's one thing we need to make sure to check in the Riviera line. Anyway, full brakes it as we come into Cogan. Any second now. 3, 2, 1, full brakes. Let's listen to some brake squeal, shall we? Oh, the brakes are a little bit delayed as well. There you go. So the brakes were a little bit delayed there as well, so that's quite interesting. So yeah, the brake stopping sounds are alright. Let's get the doors open there as well. So yeah, the sounds on the Cardiff City Network one aren't too bad in my opinion. I don't think they're that far off, but I can see what some people mean, especially after playing the Riviera line for a little bit. So, you know, with that said, let's actually jump into the Riviera line and see what it's like afterwards. So here we go, I've jumped into the Riviera line. So let's get ourselves started and get ourselves set up, shall we? So the first thing, again, is that there's all different sort of buttons and stuff in here. Like I said, the first thing I noticed was the lights down here. So these all look different, but there's all sorts of different things down here. There's like a WSP thing down here. So yeah, this has all been changed, which is quite interesting. So if we get ourselves set up, let's do that. Let's put that into forwards, happy days. And let's listen to the door opening sounds first off. So, door opening sounds. They sound better. They sound a lot better if I'm honest. Yeah, there you go. The physics of the doors are pretty much the same though. As for the idling sounds, it is actually noticeably louder than the Cardiff City Network one, which is quite interesting. So it certainly sounds a bit more beefy. Whilst we've got a minute here, let's have a little run through the train once more. So let's go through here. So the modelling, not too dissimilar to be honest. It's obviously just a different livery. Yeah, I think the modelling inside the actual train is very similar to the Cardiff City Network one. I don't imagine they'd be too dissimilar anyway. The main thing would be like the northern one, for example, if we ever got that, because that's 3x2 seating. So obviously an interesting thing about this Class 150 is that it'll have the new announcements, so the Cardiff City Network one won't have that. I don't know whether that's been backported or anything, but that'll be quite interesting if it is. Anyway, let's get back in the cab. So let's get in here and let's do an 8 cam and an external shot, because again, we listened to it on the Cardiff City Network, so let's close the doors and see what it sounds like on this route. Right, let's close the doors and listen to those sounds. They sound decent. They sound pretty decent if I'm honest. So, let me go over here and do an external shot. So this is what the Riviera line Class 150 sounds like. I'll try and be quiet. Let's get it going. Oh, it's much better, isn't it? Oh, nice. Off it goes. Yeah, do you know what? It actually sounds a lot better on this route. It really does. It sounds a lot more beefy. Of course, if we go on the outside, the sort of dawdling sounds are different. So as it sort of like plods along, it sounds a bit more beefier. Of course, now we should get up to 100 mile an hour. There's another 150 there. So the smoke. Smoke is another big thing. You know, you can certainly notice the smoke a bit more. Oh, there's some brakes on that one as well. The brakes sound a bit different as well. Right, we can get up to 75, so I'm going to go right up to it and I'm going to full beans it to see what it sounds like at full throttle. So let's get going. Let's get going. Yeah, it sounds better. That sounds awesome. It really, really does. Yeah, full throttle, it sounds really, really good, doesn't it? So you can sort of tell, like with the Cardiff City Network one, it sounded like it was struggling when it was at full throttle. With this, it sounds like it's got more power, which is quite good. It sounds a lot stronger. Of course, physics-wise, it's got to get up and go about it. It certainly shifts. So, I mean, we full beans it and we're almost at 50 mile an hour. So, of course, compared to the Cardiff City Network, that's quite similar because they both have got a lot of power behind them. Like I say, compared to the West Cornwall local one, which didn't have as much power, these two versions certainly have like pretty decent physics, in my opinion. Hey, I tell you what, it's having no issues get up to 75, is there? So, another thing we need to test out as well is the horn. So, let's do it, shall we? Let's do a horn as we go through the next station of Marsh Barton, because that's kind of realistic. Right, let's do some horn action then. So, pretty decent horn, very strong horn. I like a strong horn. Another thing to note is that in the cab it actually sounds a lot noisier, which is quite good. In the Cardiff City Network one, it kind of sounded a bit more insulated. With this, you can certainly hear pretty much everything with the train, which is quite interesting. In fact, it's noisier, so I need to turn it down a little bit, just a tad. But yeah, I'm impressed with the new sounds. You can definitely tell they've put a lot of work into the sounds. Right, we've just gone past the whistle board, so let's do a... Oh, the horn sounds good from inside the cab. I'm impressed with that, yeah. The actual internals sound much better. That's one thing I think is much better than the externals. Now, one thing I want to test out is that we've got a 40 limit coming up, so I'm going to slow down and see what it's like as it slows down. So let me take the beans off and let's put in, you know, just brake one. What's it like when it slows down? The brakes are relatively similar, I feel like. It's hard to tell because we're going so quick, but I feel like we need to put a lot more beans in. The sort of hum though that's coming from the 150 sounds pretty decent in my opinion. Right, let's go down to maybe brake 2. How good are the brakes when you slow down a bit more? I mean, they slow down. The brakes are pretty decent actually. I feel like the Class 150 on the Cardiff City Network was a bit more delayed. With this, it's a bit more responsive, which is good. Well, let's slow right down to 40. We're going a bit too quick. So the brakes are quite noisy actually. When you put the brakes on, you can certainly hear like everything in the cab, which is really interesting. So as we roll around here, we can get back up to 75. So let's go back outside the train once more and do some full beans, just to listen to some full throttle sounds once again. So let's have a listen. Oh, it sounds nice. It sounds really good. I'm well impressed with that. I really am. Of course, as we fly along here, we've got the new smoke coming out of the exhausts there. So yeah, that's pretty similar to the Cardiff City Network one. Yeah, I'm impressed with the sounds. I really am. Definitely impressed with the sound. So you can certainly hear that they've done a lot of work, which is good. Going through another station here, I think this is Starcross, so we're almost at Dawlish Warren. It's a bit of a longer service this, but it was kind of the best way to listen to the full throttle and stuff like that. So it's not really like a 100% one-to-one comparison, but you get the idea. But yeah, I think the main takeaway from this is that they have certainly improved the sounds, and it sounds really, really good as well. So yeah, they've improved it. The 150 sounds really, really good, and I'm looking forward to when they eventually bring this back to the Cardiff City Network one. Now it's brake test time, because we've got a red signal just before Dawlish Warren, so the brakes are pretty decent. I think the brakes are alright. They're much more responsive than the Cardiff City Network one. Now I have a horrible feeling this is going to be an example of approach control, so we're going to slow right down to around about 25, just to be safe. Hopefully as well, we should hear the announcement. Oh no, we need to slow down for this red signal. Can we keep going? No, we've got to wait for the signal to change. Ah, approach control. I thought it was. And here's the announcement. Now I do wonder whether they'll backport the announcements into the Class 150 on the Cardiff City Network. That'd be really cool if they did. Anyway, let's listen to the brakes as we slow down here. Let's listen to the brake squeal. Right then, I'm going to do the same as before. I'm going to full brakes it in 3, 2, 1. Full brakes. All the brakes. Full service. What do the brake sounds sound like? Oh, oh, oh. Ooh. Okay. So it's a different sort of brake sound. A lot more squealy than before. Cool, now that we've stopped, let's listen to the door opening sounds as well. So let's open the doors. They sound pretty decent, them, you know. Yeah, they're pretty decent. Also, the doors open after the chime, which is quite interesting. Right then, there we go. That was a little look at the Riviera line Class 150, and I tell you what, there is a lot of improvements there, and I'm quite impressed with it. So what we'll do now is we'll spawn the 2 Class 150s back at St David's, so I'll see you there. So we're back here on the Riviera line, and here's the 2 Class 150s. So what's the main difference before versus after? Obviously the before version of the Class 150, it sounds alright in my opinion. A lot of people think it doesn't sound that great, but it's alright, it's okay. It's not as throaty as the Great Western Railway one though. And of course we've got some other key features, like inside the cab it's got the old sort of lighting controls and stuff like that. So it's kind of like an older version of the 150. I have got to admit that both the trains are beautifully well modelled, so there's no issues with the modelling. I do prefer the Great Western Railway one though, because it just looks really nice in delivery. But yeah, for the modelling on the Cardiff City Network Class 150, it's pretty decent. Obviously it's just the sounds that aren't as good as the Great Western Railway one. Of course, for the Great Western Railway Class 150, this sounds absolutely fantastic. Of course, like I mentioned before, they have gone out and got some reference for the Class 150, so of course, naturally, it's going to sound better now. I also feel that compared to the Cardiff City Network one, this 150 has much better physics. I think it's really, really good. But of course, we can't forget that the Cardiff City Network is actually going to see some of the sounds improvements, so eventually, both these Class 150s will sound just as good as one another. But let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think the new Class 150 sounds as good as it should? Let me know. So now that we've compared the 2 Class 150s, I'm going to leave that video there. So thank you all for watching this video. I've been Richie, and I hopefully see you all next time. Bye bye.